What do you do when you've gotten to the point, you're ready, you've decided, enough with this sole proprietorship thing. I'm ready to make it official. Don't go anywhere, because I'm going to tell you step by step how to transition or convert or change or go from sole proprietorship to an LLC. Hi there, I'm Aiden Durham, business and branding attorney with 180 Law Co. in Colorado, and I have helped hundreds of clients set up successful businesses. I've made a lot of content about LLCs. Far and away, LLCs are the most popular business entity for small businesses to use. But not every business starts as an LLC. A lot of us start as sole proprietorships. When we're first starting a business, an LLC isn't always necessary, and it's not always a good use of often limited resources when we're first starting a business. But eventually, maybe things start to get a bit settled, you're starting to make money, things are starting to go really well, and it's time you took the leap and made things more official and start operating your business as an LLC. Before we talk about how you go about doing that, make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already done so, and be sure to hit that little notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes of All Up in Your Business. Going from a sole proprietorship to an LLC isn't really all that different from just starting a business as an LLC from the beginning. There are some things that are different, but overall, a lot of the process is exactly the same. So if you want to make sure you've covered all of the bases, not just with forming the LLC, then check out my ultimate new business checklist. You can download that for free through the link in the description. Before we talk about how you might convert to an LLC, let's talk first about why you would want to do that. The primary reason, the primary driving force for most people when forming an LLC is for the liability protection that you get from it. By forming an LLC, you are separating yourself personally from your business, including its liabilities, debts, and obligations. So that's really the primary benefit, and why you would typically want to form an LLC is for personal liability protection. There's also a potential for some tax savings sometimes if you make an S-Corp election for your LLC. Now, just forming an LLC, if you're going from sole proprietorship to LLC, you're really not going to see any difference at all in your taxes. The tax portion, how it's taxed, is exactly the same, but you can potentially see some savings by making an S-Corp election for your LLC. And then, of course, some people feel like being an LLC, operating your business as an LLC, just makes you look more legit, more professional, more official if you have that LLC in your business name. Whatever the reason behind it, before we start this process of going from sole proprietorship to LLC, we want to have kind of a good date in mind of this is when it's going to be official. This is when we will be officially no longer a sole proprietorship. That doesn't necessarily mean this is the day we're going to file our LLC paperwork, because sometimes we have to do that in advance. But we need to set a date for this is when officially we're going to have everything moved over, have everything switched, and officially we're now working as an LLC. This whole process, everything involved, usually will take a month or two. So I like to set that date out at least a month. Give yourself at least a month to prepare and plan for this transition. So now, how do we go about doing this thing? The first step, of course, is to form the LLC. This is done by filing a form with the Secretary of State in the state where you want the LLC to be registered. In a lot of states, this is called the Articles of Organization. Not every state calls it that. Sometimes it's a Certificate of Organization, Certificate of Formation. The name of the form is going to vary from state to state. A lot of it are called Articles of Organization. So you would file the Articles of Organization to get the LLC formed. If you're trying to decide which state should I form this in, 99 out of 100 times, I recommend to my clients, let's just form this thing in the state that you live in. A lot of people think, oh, I want to form in Wyoming or Delaware or Nevada. I get these tax breaks, no income tax or no corporate tax, blah, blah, blah. If you are a single member LLC, which you would be if you're going from sole proprietorship to LLC and you're not adding any other members, you'd be considered a single member LLC. If you form in Delaware, but you live in Colorado, you're not paying income tax in Delaware anyway. You're still paying income tax in Colorado because that's where you live. So for single member LLCs, there's very rarely a good reason to form in a state other than the state where you live. Of course, talk to an attorney, make sure that's the right move for you. But if you're unsure, usually you want to start in the state where you live. So of course, before you file the articles of organization, actually form the LLC, you need to know which state you're going to register it in. You're also going to need to know the name that you want to use for the LLC, and you'll want to check the Secretary of State's records to make sure that name's available. You also need the address that you're going to use for the LLC's principal office address, and you'll need a name and address for the LLC's registered agent. Some states might request more information than just that, but at least at the basics, most states are going to require those 4 things. You might also need to know how the LLC is going to be managed, if it's going to be member managed versus manager managed. You can check the description. I will link to some resources as far as virtual office addresses go if you don't want to use your home address, registered agent services if you don't want to use your home address or be your own registered agent. I'll link to some resources in the description to help you guys with that. You also may need to withdraw a DBA or trade name registration before you file the LLC. Maybe. If you've been operating under a DBA or a trade name for your sole proprietorship, and the name that you want to use for the LLC is that same DBA or trade name, then you might need to withdraw that DBA registration so the name becomes available before you file the paperwork for the LLC, so there won't be a conflict with the naming. Maybe, if that applies to you. If not, then you don't have to worry about it. After you form the LLC, of course, you might also want to then file or register a DBA or a trade name if you're going to be operating under a name that is different from the LLC's name. All right, so there we go. The LLC is formed. We did it. We formed the LLC. Is that it? No, it's definitely not it. There's more to it. Next, we need to prepare our operating agreement for the LLC. This isn't something that's required in most states. It's optional, but we know from case history and legal precedent that it's a really good idea, particularly for a single member LLC, to have an operating agreement. There are lots of templates and free resources available online. There are other templates and guides that you can purchase. Of course, I recommend working with an attorney to have your operating agreement drawn up if you can. One way or another, though, you want to make sure you have an operating agreement for the LLC. Next, we're going to apply for an EIN for the LLC, or a tax ID number. This is like the Social Security number for the LLC. If you already had an EIN for your sole proprietorship, then you'll need to apply and get a new EIN for this LLC. That's a big question that often comes up is, do I need a new EIN if I'm going from sole proprietor to LLC? Yes, you do. If you didn't have an EIN for your sole proprietorship, then it's not required that you have one for an LLC. A single member LLC isn't required to have an EIN by the IRS, but for banking purposes and kind of just good practice, it's essentially required. So whether or not it's actually legally required, it's still a good idea once you set up that LLC to go apply for an EIN or a new EIN if you already had one. Next, you're going to want to open a new business bank account for the LLC. Maybe you had a dedicated bank account for your sole proprietorship. That's great. We don't want to use that one anymore. We've got this LLC now and it needs its own bank account attached to its EIN and its name and all of that. So we're going to get rid of that old one, or maybe you didn't have an old bank account for the sole proprietorship. Either way, we're going to set up a new business bank account for the LLC. And we're going to get all of our bookkeeping and records set up. So whether you're doing this yourself, like through QuickBooks or another bookkeeping software, get all that set up under the name of the LLC. And speaking of bookkeeping, now, I promise you guys, now's the time, not later. Don't try to do it yourself. Now's the time to make sure you're setting up your bookkeeping and accounting records and ideally hiring someone to handle those things for you. Whether it's an in-house bookkeeper, a part-time bookkeeper, a tax professional accountant, a CPA, you want someone ideally, unless you are really good at this stuff and you're okay handling it yourself, it's good to have a tax professional or accounting professional helping you with your accounting and your bookkeeping. I recently connected with a company called Finance Pal, and I'm really excited about it. Finance Pal offers a variety of services from bookkeeping, payroll, accounting services, tax advising services, tax filings, and more, all for one flat, affordable monthly rate. And Finance Pal works exclusively with small businesses so they can custom tailor a quote that'll fit your specific needs. So if you're now making the leap and becoming official as an LLC, it's also a great time to make the leap and become official by outsourcing your bookkeeping and accounting. And if you want a way to do it in an affordable and efficient way, then Finance Pal is a perfect option. I will, of course, put a link in the description so you guys can check them out, but I do have a little secret for you. So, of course, you can use my link in the description to request a quote from Finance Pal. But then, if you tell them I sent you and ask for 50% off of the first month's fee, they'll probably give it to you. All right, so now we've got everything set up for the LLC. The LLC is set up, of course. We got our operating agreement prepared, got our tax ID number, and we set up our bank accounts and our bookkeeping records. All of that stuff is really the same as it would be if we were starting an LLC fresh from the very beginning. But we're not. We are going from sole proprietorship to LLC. So here are the special things that are going to apply because we've already been operating as a sole proprietorship. Now we need to transfer, move, retitle, whatever it is. We need to get anything that belonged to the sole proprietorship. We need that moved over to the LLC now. So money in bank accounts, of course. If you had your funds from your sole proprietorship in a bank account, put that over into the LLC's account. Computer equipment, office supplies, inventory, even intellectual property, trademark, copyright, patent registrations, any assets of the sole proprietorship, we want to make those assets of the LLC now. Exactly how we go about doing that, transferring or assigning or moving assets to the LLC, it's going to depend on the asset itself. Typically, we're going to want some kind of document showing that we have transferred this from the sole proprietorship to the LLC. It might be a bill of sale or a transfer or assignment agreement, essentially as if you are selling these assets to the LLC, because you kind of are, not for cash necessarily, but you're selling them, you're giving them over to the LLC in exchange for this membership interest in the LLC. So for all intents and purposes, we kind of are selling them to the LLC. So we need to treat it like as if we were selling them to anybody else. So again, bill of sale, transfer assignment agreements with intellectual property registrations, trademark registrations. We would need to file an assignment document with the USPTO to affect that. We also need to change the name on any of these accounts. Things like insurance policies, vendor accounts, maybe you signed up for, I don't know, a Stripe or a Square account with your sole proprietorship. We need to get all of these now under the LLC. It's going to depend on each vendor, the other party. Sometimes you might need to start a brand new account under the LLC. Sometimes you'll be able to update the EIN and the name to the LLC. Whatever the case, we want to get everything under the LLC. Same goes for things like business licenses, business permits, sales tax licenses or permits, anything that had the sole proprietorship attached to it or the sole proprietorship's name or anything that you used for the sole proprietorship, one way or the other, we want to get the LLC named on that thing instead. We also need to deal with any contracts that might have been under the sole proprietorship, because we now want these contracts under the LLC. So this might be things like service agreements, client contracts between you and your clients, contracts with your service providers or vendors. How we go about doing this is going to depend on the terms of the contract itself. Sometimes we can just amend the contract to change the name to the LLC. Sometimes we have to sign a whole new contract, so terminate that initial contract and sign a brand new one under the name of the LLC. And sometimes, again, it always depends, but sometimes we have to let that existing contract expire, and then we can enter into a new one under the LLC. So again, it always, of course, depends, but one way or another, we want to make sure any contract that sole proprietorship was a party to, we now want the LLC to be a party to that contract instead. And then finally, of course, we want to just update the name of the business anywhere and everywhere. Even if the name of your LLC is substantially the same as the name that you used for your sole proprietorship, that LLC name is still going to include something like LLC or limited or some designation. And we need to put that on marketing, advertising materials, contracts. People who are dealing with the LLC need to know they are dealing with an LLC, and that's why we have that LLC in our business names. So we want to make sure Google listings, Facebook pages, Instagram, anywhere your business existed, now it's the LLC that exists. Bottom line, we need to make sure anything and everything everywhere that belonged to the sole proprietorship now has been transferred or assigned or moved over and now belongs to the LLC. If you don't take the proper steps in doing that, if they're still using personal assets for the LLC that haven't really been transferred over, you could be on the hook personally for debts, liabilities, obligations of the business. And there you go, folks. We've got our bases covered as far as moving from that sole proprietorship to the LLC. Of course, there are a lot of other things that go into starting a business, even if you're starting an LLC that you originally started as a sole proprietorship. So again, check the description for a link to download my free ultimate new business checklist. If you got value out of this video, give me a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe and click that little notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Aiden Durham, and I'll see you next time.